Newport-Fersan in the Field. Real Issues, Real Solutions is brought to you by Newport-Fersan Jamaica Limited, the first on the land.
Now it is time for First and in the Field Real Issues, Real Solutions. And joining us is Melvin Henry, Technical Manager. Good morning, Melvin. And I know that you're all going to have a fantastic time over the course of this month, as you always do, working with farmers. Of course, this month is very special because it is Farmers Month. So I should say Happy Farmers Month, because anyone who is working in the agricultural sector deserves to celebrate with our farmers, because of course you're supporting the farmers. How are you?
I am doing fine out here. Good morning to our listeners, and let me join you in saying Happy Farmers Month to our farmers, and by extension those who continue to support the initiative where agriculture is concerned.
All right, thank you so very much for that. All right, so when I saw Melvin, the topic that you're going to be discussing today, it occurred to me that, listen, we talk about this being a science, agriculture being a science, but it is not very often that in engaging our farmers we get to, or we use the terms that really take us in the direction of the science, the scientific side of it. They're practicing the science every day, they're engaging with it, but we're not always talking about it. And so the topic is understanding and managing Cation Exchange Capacity, CEC for soil health. I'm going to ask you to explain what that is. But from my little knowledge of science, I know that when you talk about cation, you're talking about a positively charged ion. Is that right?
You're spot on, Altia. You're spot on, and I must agree with you in your initial assessment that oftentimes, yes, our farmers are practicing. The reality, however, is that, and I find it in my decades of work in the field, that sometimes as technocrats, we ourselves are shy, for want of a better word, to engage our farmers. But as you realize that more and more persons are getting into agriculture, different, you have lawyers doing agriculture. And what I find is, interestingly, once you engage any of our farmers using terms that and breaking down things, our farmers understand and appreciate what is being said. And so it is that the conversations must be had, because we want our farmers to appreciate the science, and what our responsibility is to ensure that we break down terms and concepts into manageable parts that can be appreciated and farmers can act accordingly. So when we refer to Cation Exchange Capacity, and as you rightly say, let us break this down into very simple terms. Cations, as you rightly said, refers to those nutrients that the plant use that have a positive charge. And some of these include calcium, magnesium, potassium, ammonium, which is a form of nitrogen, iron, manganese, copper, zinc. So we're talking about a lot of nutrients that the plant utilizes that are classified as cations. They have a positive charge. Now, the soils are predominantly negatively charged. And why is this important to note? It's important because just as how you have a magnet to steel relationship, it is important because this is how the nutrients, when applied, remains within the root zone of the plant for the plant to use it at some point in time. All right, so it is very important that you have that negatively charged soil particles and these positively charged nutrients sticking to. Where did the word exchange comes from? in cation exchange capacity. Exchange comes in because each time that the plant takes up a positively charged nutrient into the system via the root for growth, development, and production, it must be replaced. In other words, if you're removing 5 units of potassium from the soil particles, which must then fall into solution, meaning mixed with water, and it is taken up by the plant, there must be 5 units of something that replaces that potassium that was removed. And that is why the exchange comes in. So it's a simple analogy would be, imagine you have in a liter of water in a bottle. The moment you start to pour the water from that bottle, you're actually replacing water with air. So there has to be a replacement. So that's a simple analogy of how it happens. So the capacity, therefore, is how much nutrient can your soil really add holes in readiness for use by the plant. And this is a critical component for us to understand as we move from different soil types, because it influences our management practices on farm, if it is that we're going to get the best result in terms of yield at the end of a crop cycle.
So nature, as the saying goes, abhors a vacuum. I saw that, as I listened to you, just heard that being demonstrated so ably there. So why is that cation exchange capacity important for soil health, Melvin?
Okay, so the cation exchange capacity is very important. Just now I listed about 8 nutrient elements right, that are required for the healthy growth and development of all crops. And they are cation. So the importance of the cation exchange capacity, meaning how much of these nutrients can your soil hold at any given point in time, is important because nutrient retention is a critical component of soil health. And understanding what is the capacity, the carrying capacity of your soil, will better able in our management practices. Not only is the CEC merely important for just an indication of how well the soil is going to hold the nutrients that you applied, because you don't really want to apply nutrient and because your soil CEC is low, and we'll get into that later on, you realize that a lot of the nutrient that you applied all at once is not available whenever the plant requires it for use. Why? It is leached out of the soil in the soil water, because there's not enough capacity on the soil particles to hold an abundance. And just like a piece of magnet out here, it can only pick up so much and no more, let's say nails. At a certain point, the nails starts to fall off. And it's the same principle, just trying to be graphic. Now, apart from influencing the nutrient holding capacity or ability of the soil, the CEC also gives an indication of how well your soil will also be able to hold water. All right? So those are some of the key components or indicators from a soil CEC measurement that normally comes back on a soil test report. It puts us in a position to provide better guidance as it relates to these 2 critical components. So the soil fertility depends heavily on how well or how high, what's the measure of your soil CEC. And as a result of that, since we're actually exposing, for want of a better word, or delving into the different components of soil health, it was necessary for us to have a look at this one, because it makes a difference, clear difference, between a farmer succeeding and a farmer failing, one understanding what needs to be done based on the CEC level, and the other pay no attention. And this is what we're trying to accomplish this morning.
Well, that leads me then to, and you've already started to touch on some of it, the factors that affect or impact that cation exchange capacity level of the soil. And Melvin, already I'm acknowledging that nature is changing. We have seen so many changes, climate change, and other factors impacting what is happening out there in nature. And I would imagine that some of this also will impact that cation exchange capacity level in the soil.
Absolutely, absolutely. I could not have said it better, Altia. The reality is that when you look at soil texture, for example, so we're talking about, we have three main soil particles, sand, clay, and silt. And depending on the ratio, how much of each is found in a particular area in a mix, you have the in-between. So you talk about clay soils, clay loam, silty loam. Those are some of the classification. And that is just a reflection of how much of each is in the mix. Now, it is well established that the soils that have higher clay content tends to have a higher CEC. Why? Compared to our sandy soils, in comparison to our sandy soils. Our clay soils, as simple as it might sound, our clay soils have a greater ability to hold nutrients, mainly because at the micro level, at the very minute and small level, you have, in let's say, a tablespoon of clay soil in its refined stage, you're talking about billions of individual soil particles. And it is on the outer surface of each individual soil particle that the nutrient really sticks to. So it adheres to the outer surface. Compared to sand, a teaspoon or the same measurement, a tablespoon of sand, does not have the same number of individual particles. And as a result, what you find happening is that your clay soils has the ability to hold more nutrients, have a higher CEC compared to our sandy soils. Organic matter content, and we looked at organic matter content last week and the role it plays in ensuring that we have healthy soils. Now, organic matter content by its very nature has a negative charge, and it therefore means that if your organic matter content is at a certain level, it also contributes to how well the soil is able to retain nutrients that is applied and also water that is required for the proper growth and development of the plant. So organic matter, again, higher levels of organic matter contributes to higher levels of CEC, which is essentially the ability of the soil to hold nutrients in place for the plant to use. Another factor that affects the CEC is the acidity or the pH level of the soil. It is well documented, and research has shown where the soils that are more acidic tends to have a lower CEC, while neutral to slightly alkaline soils tend to have a higher CEC. And that is why, in the grand scheme of things, whenever we are trying to ensure that we have the best of all the worlds in the root zone, in the soils for our plants to grow and develop, it means we need to look at different components. So we look at CEC, we look at organic matter content, we look at soil pH. And it is an understanding of all of these factors that enable us to make sound and solid decisions. Pretty much the same way a medical practitioner operates. So there is this host of testing that you're sent to do, and it is the result of those that are used to make informed decisions. And it's the same thing as you said earlier. We're operating in no lesser science. Agriculture is key. It has a lot of principles, and we're here to bridge the gap between all the technical components and making them into workable, readily appreciated concept for us to have the best results out there. So organic matter content, the pH, and of course the texture of the soil, be it clay sand or silt, and the in-betweens are the major factors which determines the CEC, the nutrient holding capacity of our soil.
Well, you're turning all of us into scientists, and it is very important for that to happen. So I had to step back and go back to even a little of what I would have learned in high school. And I'm certain that the farmers are appreciating the information that is being shared this morning. Melvin, we're going to take the break, and then when we come back, we want to take a look at how that cation exchange capacity impacts farm management practices in agriculture.
Farmers, you can now prevent and cure fungal diseases with Eradicate Systemic Fungicide from Newport-Fersan, Jamaica Limited. Eradicate is effective against rust in coffee, citrus, sugarcane and peanut, black and yellow cicotoca, early blight, mildews, purple blotch in onions, and other fungal diseases. Get your Eradicate at your nearest farm store or at the Newport-Fersan office, 2A2B Worry Wharf Complex. Stay in control with Eradicate.
All right, so we're having a wonderful science lesson this morning, and we've always maintained, and that is because it is the truth, that agriculture is a science. Farming is about approaching whatever it is that you're doing scientifically. You must have a method, even to your madness, when you're doing it. And so we're learning this morning about the Cation Exchange Capacity, CEC, for soil health. With us is Melvin Henry, Technical Manager, Newport-Fersan, and this is, of course, Fersan in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions. So, Melvin, how does that Cation Exchange Capacity impact farm management practices in agriculture?
Okay, so it is time for us to get practical, and this is the most important part. So it's one thing to listen to what CEC means, but how does it really, on a farm, makes a difference in the outcome of our farmers? For this conversation, we'll be looking at two operations that are necessary on a farm. The first of which is nutrient management, and the second is water management. And we're going to look at how it is that the CEC, the reported CEC, on a soil test report actually enables efficiency in how we handle nutrient management. So we have established earlier that it is the CEC that gives you an indication. The measurement gives you an indication of how well or how much nutrient that is applied will actually remain within the root zone for any particular period of time to be used by the plant. And now we'd understand clearly that, and I often say to our farmers, that nutrients applied is not nutrients that benefit you. It is nutrient that is applied and then makes its way into the system of the plant. So it therefore means that if you're applying nutrients and whenever the plant is ready for that nutrient, it is unavailable because it was leached from the root zone, then it simply means that you would have incurred a loss. So the CEC retains the nutrients, and I called them earlier the calcium, the magnesium, the ammonium, the iron, the copper, the manganese, all of these nutrients critical for growth and development. Now, in terms of fertilizer use efficiency, here's how practically this information helps us as practitioners and farmers. If it is that it is determined that your soil has a low CEC, meaning anything below 10, and I'll explain that later. It means, therefore, that in spite of the fact that your crop requires a certain volume or quantity of nutrients, because it has a low holding capacity, it makes absolutely no sense to apply all of that nutrient all at once. So let's use a practical example. Your soil has the capacity, and for ease of reference, to retain 3 units of nutrients in total. But for the crop cycle, you're required to apply 15 units of nutrient. If you apply all of that 15 nutrient that is required all at once, the soil will only retain 3 due to its capacity to hold, which is 3, and then what do you think will happen to the remaining 12? The remaining 12 will not stick around until 3 is removed. In most cases where your CEC is low, once there is rainfall or you apply water, that 12 excess that you applied all at once will be lost. So in a situation like this, how do we proceed to manage the situation? We manage the situation by breaking up the applications into different parts. So the capacity says it can hold 3. We time the application to have 5 applications of 3 because the total required is 50. So instead of dumping all of that fertilizer all at once, you're losing the majority of it because the property of the soil is of such that it will not retain all. What we advise our farmers to do is to apply some, a little later, so you have more frequency and lower dosage because efficiency is the order of the game. So it doesn't satisfy any of our farmers just to apply fertilizer for the mental satisfying or appeasing of the mind that you did something. We want you to take steps to ensure that based on the properties of the soil, we're acting in accordance. So if your CEC is low, you're going to have to get the best out of that soil, making more frequent applications, or you'll be actually throwing away your money. Where moisture management is concerned, or water management is concerned, again, the CEC report on the soil test result indicates the textural class, meaning whether the soil is sandy, a mixture of clay, whether it is loamy. Now, we have seen it so often out here where a lot of farmers not paying close attention to the water holding capacity of the soil. So there's 2 things. The nutrient holding capacity, how much can I hold? Can hold so much and no more. And then there's also the water holding capacity. And we understand it. Sandy soils have a lower water holding capacity. They have a lower CEC when compared to clay soil. All right? So it therefore means for efficiency, a farmer who should apply for ease of conversation, let's say 100 gallons of water for the day, it makes absolutely no sense to turn on that irrigation system and run 100 gallons of water all at once. A very low percentage of that will remain in your sandy soils with low CEC for use by the plant. And very shortly thereafter, once that is out, you're going to see the effects showing up on the plant. So how are we guided in a situation like this? Or how does the CEC help us to guide our farmers? You will notice that in situations like this where you have clearly a low CEC soil, we'll say to you that your water application frequency should be high, meaning several applications per day, but small increments. Because once you pass the threshold or that ideal level that the soil can hold, you're going to end up with wastage. So imagine you have a cup that can hold, yes, a cup of water, and you're pouring 1 liter. At some point, once that cup reaches its capacity, then you start to have a lot of spillage. That is the volume of water that you'd have wasted operating an irrigation system like that. And now there's the combination of both worlds, nutrient management and water management. And this is what we refer to now as fertigation, applying both fertilizer and irrigation water together. Oftentimes, when the CEC of the soil is low, meaning that soil holds both nutrients and water at a very low level, what we recommend to our farmers, and we have been implementing programs like that, revolutionizing a lot of our farmers' operation and their productivity, is we implement what is called a CLF. It means continuous liquid feed. So the general practice is that you would apply, you do a fertigation on a Monday, for example, where you apply both water and nutrients. And in between, you will be applying water alone. What we find happening is that you apply the nutrients on Monday, but because you're applying water alone on Tuesday, alone on Wednesday, and then before Thursday you do a joint operation again, we realize that a lot of our farmers, based on the low level of their CEC, have been displacing the nutrient that was applied. So you apply the nutrient on Monday, and then on Tuesday, because the soil has a very low ability to hold nutrient and water, you flush that nutrient on Tuesday and Wednesday from the root zone of the plant. So we have developed a system where every time in situations like that, every time that you turn on that system, we're actually applying in small increments both nutrients and water. So at no point in time will you have a situation where the required volume of nutrient in the root zone is low, because you're irrigating only and flushing away the nutrient from the root zone. And that has been revolutionary for a number of farmers, as I said before, and it is something that we continue to practice once we have that soil test result in our hand. It gives us that amount of knowledge or information for us to make sound decisions in how our farmers should operate based on their local conditions.
All right, and Melvin, we're on to our final break. I'm going to take the break and then come right back to you. And the question that I had, but that a farmer has just sent to ask, how do you measure? What do you use to measure that cation exchange capacity? So we'll take a look at that when we come back. All right, so we are into the final segment of the program for today. With us is Melvin Henry, Technical Manager, and this is the feature Fersan in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions. We're discussing understanding and managing cation exchange capacity, CEC, for soil health. And we have already learned from Melvin what that soil cation exchange capacity is, why it is important for soil health. He has spoken to us about how it is that this cation exchange capacity impacts farm management practices. So we're talking nutrient management as well as water management. But very importantly, Melvin, and I know the listeners won't forgive me, how is the cation exchange capacity measured?
Okay, so that is the simplest of questions to respond to. So it entails a process, as I would have been hinting at earlier, that we execute the soil sampling exercise. So there is a protocol, meaning that there's a specific procedure that must be followed. And that is what we do here at Newport-Fersan as part of our service. And once that soil sample is collected, properly packaged and sent to the lab, we await the report, which normally details the findings. And it is from that we're able to, being trained in the field, to determine what level it is your soil sample CEC is. So we normally say that an ideal range is between 15 and 20 milliequivalent per 100 gram of soil, meaning that's what 100 gram of soil will be able to retain. Once it is 10 and below, it is considered low, and if it is 25, 30 and above, it is considered high. Now, it is very important to understand that oftentimes farmers will see us making recommendations for the same crop, requiring the same level of intervention, but we're saying to one farmer, you need to apply this nutrient in 3 separate applications, whilst for another farmer, doing the same application, applying the same product, we might ask that farmer to apply it 2 times. Why? It is the determination based on that report that one soil has a better holding capacity than the other. And that is how this piece of information on all of our soil test reports help us to help or assist our farmers in making better decisions in their day-to-day operations on farm. So it is something that is assessed in a laboratory setting. The world is fastly evolving, so in short order, there are some equipment around now, a lot of them in their infancy stages, that we will be able to probe and able to determine electronically what the CEC is of our soil.
And that is really important information. Until then, I would imagine, Melvin, you'll continue to assist farmers with their on-farm activities based on the findings from the soil analysis, right? Because I know you use the information to provide them with, to assist them with issues like precise nutrient management.
Absolutely. And so it is long gone are those days when the name Fersan was associated with merely selling fertilizer. We're integrally involved in the entire process, pre-crop, during the crop life, and even post-production stages we're involved. And so it is that inserting ourselves and making ourselves available to guide the entire process to ensure success on the part of our farmers is what we have committed ourselves to, and we'll continue to do, providing that guidance in general settings like this, as well as individual, unique settings where we either interface with a farmer or a farmer reach out to us for our intervention. That's pretty much our commitment to the sector, and it being Farmers Month, definitely we hope to, as best as we can, respond to the needs and the interventions required by our farmers to make better results in terms of their outcome.
All right, certainly sounds good. There's someone wanting to find out whether or not once you do the soil sampling and you get that CEC reading, if as a matter of course it is included in the report that you give to the farmer.
Absolutely. So once the soil test result comes back, the precise nutrient management program that is developed on a crop by crop basis, the first table that is normally included in that report is the results that comes from the lab. And the reason for that is that any discussion that we'll have with the farmer subsequent to us preparing that report, there has to be a premise on which. So if, for example, the farmer asks, why is it that you're telling me that I need to make 2 split applications of this particular fertilizer? There is the evidence on the report that will explain to say, okay, based on your soil CEC, it is at 10, which means that the soil has a low capacity of holding nutrients. So once you applied this volume, the rest, the excess, will be lost, and this is why we're making this decision. So it is included in every proposal that we make, and I'm using the term not lightly. It is a proposal, and it is our responsibility once we engage with the farmers to clarify why is it that we're saying this should be the approach to get your best results in the field. So it's included.
All right, and so we want to encourage the farmers then, once they're getting the soil test done, to say to the agronomist, listen, can you just help me? Can you just walk me through this Cation Exchange issue and what it is that I need to be aware of, what it is that I need to do to ensure that I get it right on my farm. Very important information you have shared with us this morning, Melvin. I know that the farmers are appreciative of it. Certainly, that is one of the reasons why a farmer like Michael will refer to this show as the Farmers University, because when you come, you're coming with comprehensive information that is vital information that the farmers need to have in his or her back pocket in order to make wise decisions on their farm. Thank you so very much for this morning.
Thanks for having me as well, Alfie. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Melvin Henry there, and let us just take a quick word from them before we wrap the show.
Fersan in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions was brought to you by Newport-Fersan Jamaica Limited, the first on the land.